How many four-letter words can I use on that?
Don't get taken down. Figure it out. Like, find a way to not get taken down, even if there's a minute left.
Oh, Nick, I'm a top guy, so I love top wrestling.
We have an amazing culture within our program, and we build it. We don't buy it. We build it.
So I think that wrestling is the greatest sport on earth.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into On3 Wrestling. I'm your host, Nick Kosko, as we roll on through the summer. With me today is Derek Caldwell of CWA, the Championship Wrestling Association. Derek, it's good to talk to you, man. I know with all the pro leagues popping up new and the ones that have already been established over the last year plus, it's good to see the perspective of one here where Folkstyle has gone pro. You guys are working on Showcase number 4 in Pittsburgh later this month. And, of course, Showcase number 5 in New Jersey in August. So, first of all, thanks for hopping on. Looking forward to talking to you. And just a little bit about yourself for the listening audience out there and why this was your ultimate vision for wrestling post-collegiate.
Yeah, no, so thanks for having me, Nick. First and foremost, appreciate you taking the time and On3. So, yeah, I mean, for me, originally, I'm a Lock Haven guy. So I know a lot of your fans probably are Rutgers fans, and Coach Goodell, he's a Lock Haven guy through and through as well. So, for me, just grew up in central Pennsylvania and kind of had a different exit that I lived on as I went through my life on Interstate 80. So, was a Lock Haven guy from 2006 to 2011, competed there for them. And then, stepped into college coaching for a few years, was at Bucknell for a short stint as well. And then got out of the sport for a little while, took some jobs in the healthcare field and everything like that. But then really over the course of the pandemic, it changed kind of how I saw how we were delivering wrestling, right? Everything shut down. And there wasn't really any wrestling to be had around the 2020 NCAA championships when they canceled those ones. So when the cards started to pop up, and we saw that during the pandemic, there was nothing to do. So, we would tune in and watch these cards. They were in Pittsburgh and State College and all over the place, right? And so that really started to trigger what I thought would be opportunity for these guys post-collegiately to compete at a higher level that was beyond what they're doing for USA Wrestling. So in 2021, we started the blueprint for the Championship Wrestling Association. Originally, we were going to go freestyle with it, right? Our thought process was the senior level guys, that's what they're competing in. That's what they're focusing on. Let's do that. And then, we took a step back, reevaluated, and thought to ourselves, like, well, what do the fans understand? What are they focused on mostly? And anyone that wrestled understood, like, you learn folk style first, right? Like when you were little kids and we enter that wrestling room for the first time, folk style is what we learn. And that's really, a specific to America's style. And so for me, coming back to the drawing board saying, maybe folk style is kind of the path that we need to look at, right? It's what the fans understand. It's what we've all went through, regardless of what level we competed at. And I equate it to riding a bicycle whenever I talk to these guys that are senior level athletes now is, this is your bicycle. You're riding that bicycle. You just jump back on, you wrestle folk style. We've done it, since we were little kids. So that's where, for me, I think folk style is the route to go in terms of building a professional league. And we've done 3 showcases so far. And like you alluded to, our 4th is coming up next weekend in Pittsburgh. And then following that, we're going to be in New Jersey in the middle of August as well.
It's interesting when you go back to the model of folk style, as you mentioned, if you're wrestling in school, if you're wrestling, middle school, high school, obviously in college at the highest level, these guys at the highest level before they get to senior level, whether they pursue freestyle or Greco, they are doing folk style. In America, obviously, is the proponent of folk style when it comes to scholastic wrestling. So I am curious, though, when it comes to the slight variations in terms of the rules, the scoring, and eventually, the team stuff that you guys are planning on, which we'll dive into in a little bit for 2026. Why the slight variations in the rules? I know. So right now, obviously, the college instituted the 3-point takedown. High school has also adopted the 3-point takedown. You guys are sticking to the 2-point takedown, but there's also other scoring changes where, the riding time is reset after every period. The techs are a little bit bigger. I think you guys have something called a super tech as well. So why the slight variations in the time, the scoring for the pro style of things?
Yeah, absolutely. So it all came back to the actual match itself, and the fact that when we start as little kids, right, it's always a 1-1-1 match, right? So a 3-minute match, and every level it just goes up. And so it just made sense with the 7-minute match in college that the pro match would be a 9-minute go, would be a 3-3 match. So then when you look at that, you say, well, there's more time to do more things. And so with the 2-point takedown, that was kind of already set before college kind of ramped everything up and reset everything. And for us, with the way that we formatted the match, we felt that the 2-point takedown and the old school, I hate calling it old school, it's only 2 years removed, the back point, set up with 4 count is 2 back points and then 3 back points for a 5 count. We left that. But then with the riding time, there's so much, a 3-minute period, there's so much time in that time frame. So you can get a riding time point at the end of every period. And we reset the clock at the end of the first period, second period, regardless of if you reach that minute or not. But if you get a minute, you get a point at the end of every period. So so that's one of the major changes, I guess you could say. It's just a variation essentially to give more opportunity to score points. The other aspects of it is we use the center circle as well. So we have what's called center circle contact, and basically any neutral restart off of a whistle, you have to make contact with your opponent in that small circle. If you don't, you get banged for stalling automatically. So that's just to encourage action in the center of the mat. And obviously if you're making contact and you're not just trying to circle away from a guy late in a match, it forces more situations and opportunities to score.
I like that, especially, when people complain about stalling, especially in college wrestling, where these guys are at the highest level in terms of what we have nationwide, and yet there's a lot more stalling. You hear that stalling conversation pretty much year to year, and the obviously the changes in those rules. So as far as the league is concerned with these showcase events, I did notice that the teams are not in effect yet until next year, but these guys are at least repping, I guess, the singlets right now for these team logos, and the teams are going to be within Jersey, PA, and New York right now when you guys get that going next year. So how does that work going into next year? Not to jump too far ahead, but how does that work for next year when it comes to, are you guys going to hold a draft? Is it, are you hiring coaches? And I guess on top of that, to piggyback off that, I forget which league it was, I want to say in the early 2000s, that tried to come up. It was like what you're trying to do, go nationwide, but have teams in each city and do a league that way. Is that the kind of the model you wanted to go for, except you're going to start in the Northeast and then expand outward? Tell me a little bit about the team aspect of this.
Yeah, absolutely. So with these showcases, right, we want to be able to start to build these rosters to a point. So any guy that you see wearing a Central PA Whitetails singlet or a Philadelphia Founders singlet or a New Jersey Mob singlet, right, that's the team that they're going to be on in the fall of 2026. So, it gives people the opportunity to tie themselves to a team. Right. So when you see, for instance, coming up, Anthony Noto wrestling for the Central PA Whitetails next Saturday night, that's going to be his team in 2026. Quincy Monday, same deal, New Jersey Mob. We just announced he's going to be wrestling in CWA Showcase 5 against Jesse Delavecchia, who's going to wrestle for New York City Response. So, those guys are going to be tied to those teams in the fall of 2026. And yes, it's going to be a dual meet format. That's the intent long term. A lot of people, and I'm glad you posed the question the way you did, Nick, because people ask me is this guy going to wrestle? I said, yes, this guy is going to wrestle for the team that you see him on. Because we're building these rosters. And then, like you said, a draft as well, will come from that the following season too. So we're going to be doing 5 showcases in 5 months here, starting with the one in Pittsburgh here next weekend. And then we're going to span across. We have 6 teams set up right now, 4 in Pennsylvania and 2 in technically New Jersey. One's New York City, but we're kind of taking the Jets and the Giants model and just putting them on the other side of the border. So, so ultimately that's what the setup will look like for season 1 in 2026.
when you do a draft, what's the pool look like? Is it guys that need to sign on with the organization and just be like, all right, now I'm in the CWA pool, or can you essentially draft anybody you want that's post-college and say, all right, if you choose to, we have your rights, so to speak. How does that work?
Yeah, so for us, we're going to hold the rights of the athlete. They enter the draft. They basically declare themselves for the draft of, yes, I'm going to enter the CWA draft. So for us, though, we would obviously look at new grads coming out of college that would be able to be drafted into this league. And obviously, if there are guys that weren't in any of the showcases, they could, also enter themselves into the draft as well. So it's not like we're going to limit it just to those that just graduated in 2026. But, that's going to be kind of our initial focus coming into that draft next year.
I've noticed that, obviously with RAF coming out in August, they're going the freestyle model. And obviously they have the backing of, guys like Hulk Hogan, but they don't always just have the pros, so to speak. I'll throw Kennedy Blades out there, for instance. She still wrestles over at Iowa. Are you guys, I don't want to say limiting, but do you guys want to strictly focus on the wrestlers that are no longer in college, or could you conceivably draft somebody still wrestling for their college institution? Especially with NIL is a factor now, so I'm not sure how you guys would actually work something out like that, or are you sticking to you need to be post-grad before you enter this league?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about drafting rights of people that were still in college, but for them to actually compete within the league, they would have to be out of college. Ultimately, for us, and the way that I phrase it to these guys whenever we talk is, you can't play for Alabama on Saturday and the Cowboys on Sunday. So that's how I'm leaving the league right now. I mean, for us right now, I understand that NIL is a huge part of this ever-changing landscape in the NCAA. And I think for us personally as a league, we want to allow that to play out fully because we are starting to see situations where now that they're getting this clearinghouse for the NIL put in place, that there are, some things that they're trying to tell these institutions that they can't do. Not necessarily in wrestling, but in some other sports where I'm starting to see it. So we want to let that play out first and make sure everybody has a good grasp on what can and can't be done. And then, we can start to have those conversations down the road.
So going back to what CWA is doing, I'm excited to see what you guys do with the showcases events. And of course, once the team aspect comes in next year, but I'm excited for the other leagues too. I want to see what RAF does with, their platform. And I was always very intrigued what Claw was doing as well, because I guess they went Folkstyle and merged a couple other things together, and then they made, I don't want to say goofy, but these out of left field, out of the box type rules. Did you guys ever consider stuff like that? Where I think Claw, you can knock a pylon out, it gets you a point because it entices a lot of movement on that. Did you ever think about maybe out of the box type rules, or is it always just like, we only want to modify Folkstyle to a certain extent to keep it as close as possible?
Yeah, I think for us, to make it as truly a folk style league as possible has really been our main focus. Obviously, you want to keep action going, right? And I think a lot of that has to do with the officiating as well. For us, our officials, they're fair. I don't want to say young, but they are, they're aggressive in terms of their stalling and their willingness to let guys wrestle through positions as well. If we're not advancing position, we stalemate and come right back to where we need to be. And that's really how we help to encourage action, because you get banged for stalling early in the first, it changes the entire way that you compete in a match. And so for us, we make sure that the refs know to do that. Also make sure that the refs inform the athletes that they're going to do that. So it keeps everybody attacking. Rule set, everybody has their, kind of their flavor that they prefer, right? And then Claws, thinking outside the box and trying some different things as well. So, kudos to them in terms of trying to, evolve the sport in a different way. For us, though, folk style, you see the NCAA tournament every year, right? Like that's what people love. That's what they understand. And I think the tribalism of attaching yourself to a team that's not just a team, but also a city and a location helps to drive that as well. So that's where for us, we're trying to emulate that as much as possible. And that's why, putting teams in actual cities and geographical locations was an important point for us too.
And you have a team that's in Philadelphia, and ironically, the last NCAA championships just 4 months ago were in Philadelphia. You guys had a showcase event that week as well. Was that just? I don't want to call it luck, but was it almost like you guys were lucky that you guys capitalized with a showcase event that week, and that happened to be the most watched NCAA wrestling championships, at least for the finals, in I think it was almost 10 years at this point? Was it just like, all right, the stars are kind of aligning this week to put our league on display ahead of this grand week where we're actually going to have a team based in this city?
Yeah, I guess you could call it a happy accident, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of look at the writing on the wall, and for us, looking at coming out of Williamsport last October, what made most sense for us was like, we just got to be in Philly, like hell or high water, like just get yourself there and, put together the best card that we can for the moment. Obviously, a lot of these guys are college coaches, and some of their, what they need to do the night before NCAAs for the guys that they're coaching, takes a higher importance than wrestling in a single showcase. So we understood that going in. That's why you saw a lot of the more senior level guys, and not necessarily the college coaches that you may have seen in the past, competing in that one. But still, nonetheless, it was a great performance by all 6 matches. A lot of anticipation with some of those matches as well. Obviously, seeing a guy like Trent Hyde and Nashawn Garrett competing in that last event. Everyone loves to watch those 2 guys wrestle, and the other 10 that we had, were definitely they did a great job too.
Have you had conversations with specific NCAA coaches that are, coaching? It could be D2 or D3, but I'm curious about, the D1 coaches, considering you guys were at the championships in Philadelphia. Have you had conversations with certain individuals about this league, maybe what they can contribute from their perspective? Maybe they'll jump to the pro side if they're done with college coaching. Well, what have those conversations been like in terms of just trying to gauge their interest and I guess what they can provide to you guys as well?
Yeah, I think for us, like any guy that kind of fits in that age range of like, I'm still capable of competing, but maybe I didn't choose to wrestle freestyle because I'm not a freestyle guy, or I want to focus on the coaching side. They're definitely open to it. Biggest thing is Folkstyle has never been offered to them at this stage in their lives before. Right. And now it is. So that's the big determining factor for a lot of these guys. Like Ronnie Perry wrestled in our second one in Williamsport. Obviously, with him being at Lock Haven, that's just down the road from him. Yeah. So it made a lot of sense for him, and he's a Folkstyle guy through and through. Zeke Moisey's another one who, he's not in the college coaching ranks right now. He's running a club out of Tennessee. But for him, like, he's a Folkstyle guy. Everybody knows his Cinderella run that he had a decade ago. People can relate to Zeke's story. And where was I when I watched Zeke knock off all these guys that weekend? So, he's a fan favorite whenever we have him on any of the cards, and, he's going to be on some of these ones coming up here in the summer and fall as well. So, we're building stories and kind of pulling into that nostalgia of the fan as well, right? Like, it goes back to the NCAA championships and what you feel and what you experience during it. And the guys that we're bringing into the league, like, they draw a lot on that for some of these fans.
What is it going to take for, you guys have been successful so far through 3 events, and you got 2 more on the docket. You said you already announced, 5 more in total before the team stuff starts next year. But what does it take for a league like CWA, and maybe even all 3, to succeed at this point compared to, and again, I forget if it was 10, 15, maybe more, maybe even 20 years ago, where there was a pro wrestling league where they had teams. I think something went viral the other week. It was Chris Bono and Doug Schwab were wrestling in one of those old leagues, if you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, but stuff like that is usually only lasted, maybe 6 months to a calendar year, and then it's never to be heard from again. What do you think were the issues back then compared to now, where it seems like these leagues at least have an idea of how to stay afloat and maybe build upon something year to year?
Yeah, I think a lot of it just has to do with, with Real Pro Wrestling, I think is what you're referring to. Yes. Is they might have been a little bit ahead of their time in terms of getting on TV so quick, and then us measuring it like, well, did it pull in the ratings? It's it needs the time to marinate, right? Like, I think when we look at like the NCAA championships, everybody's like, yes, we want that, but we don't look at the 100 years that it took to get it to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so for us, right, like we are focusing on, get 500 people there from the community, from, these hotbeds of wrestling that we're putting these teams in, get them there to experience it firsthand, and then tell a friend, bring them next time when we come back around. For Pittsburgh is a great example of that. We were there for our very first one a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
We had about 150 people there. But the biggest thing that we heard afterwards is, man, if next time it comes back, I'm going to be there. And so now we're coming back and we're really going to test that and see who's going to show up. We get it out to all the people in the area, let them know about it. And then like, how many of those people can we retain? And then how many new fans can we pull in as well? So for us, it's about making sure that the scalability of it makes sense to actually build it to a point where it's not just a boom and then did anybody see it? Rather, we're going to slow build it, let it burn, let people learn about it. And then that's how we're going to draw our crowd and build our audience.
For your next event in July 26th in Pittsburgh, as you just alluded to, Showcase 4, that's out at the Live Casino in Pittsburgh. So as far as the venues are concerned, when you look at in future events, and I know you guys are coming to Toms River, New Jersey next month in August, that'll be at the RWJ Barnabas Center, which actually hosted a journeyman event last college wrestling season.
Yeah.
Rutgers, NC State, Long Island, and Princeton were all in there. So, but that arena, if you use it at full capacity, holds a couple thousand people. It's it's a high school arena, but it's one of the bigger ones in Central Jersey. So, when you look at an arena like that, do you guys plan on expanding the seating? Well, what's the goal here? As you mentioned that slow burn, I can imagine with the casino you might get 500 to maybe 1,000 people depending upon the ballroom or the arena. What does it look like for this coming event in Pittsburgh and then New Jersey, and I guess the ones subsequent to that, in terms of what are you shooting for attendance wise?
Yeah, I mean, for Pittsburgh, so it is a little bit of a smaller venue than the Live Casino in Philadelphia. The Live Casino in Philadelphia was built for MMA and boxing, so that setup was a little unique in the sense of like we could put a mat right underneath the lights that they have mounted for those boxing and MMA rings. So that was a little bit of a unique setup. But for this one, around 500 people or so is kind of what our aiming point is. And then following up in New Jersey, we're, with it being the first time being in New Jersey, right? Like we have, a good amount of contacts in New Jersey and have spoke to a good amount of people, whether it's through like Beat the Streets or some of these other high school teams and such. But we're not sure, right? Like, so our goal is to get between 600 and 700 people there. But the nice thing about the Barnabas Health Arena is that they have the ability to expand it out more if need be. So that's where for us, we're excited about the potential that it can bring. But again, like our expectation, we don't want to put it over the moon and then you fall way short to the point where it's like, man, you kind of put yourself out in an awkward spot. So it's just being smart about that. And I think over the course of time that it will get to where, you fill that 3,500 seat arena for a dual meet for the New Jersey Mob against the New York City Response.
It's funny you mentioned the MMA and boxing setup for the Live Casino in Philadelphia. So it reminded me of, MMA right now, where the UFC is the de facto MMA promotion. It has been for a long time. You've seen Bellator, where they just recently ceased operations and merged or whatever they did. You have PFL, you have ONE, and there's no league to me right now because everybody's still basically in their infancy. That is the UFC of pro wrestling right now. Do you think with CWA, we already mentioned Claw and RAF coming around the corner next month, is there room for all three because they all provide their unique opportunities? And again, that's more of like the quantity over quality, so to speak, if you want to use that term, where there's more opportunities for these guys to have a pro career outside of the senior level stuff, chasing world titles in the Olympics. Is there room for all three leagues, or do you think at some point one of these leagues is going to be the de facto one these guys chase for after a college career?
Yeah, I mean, it's so early to tell, but you got to think like that one of the three are going to rise above the other two. How that turns out, it's so early to tell. Obviously, like when you look at RAF and them going the venture capital route, that changes things in terms of what's available on the front end, but also the expectation much greater when you do something that way, right? So for them, they got to sell right away because that's the expectation, right? For us, we are a little more homegrown, I guess you could say, where we're building it from the ground up, and we understand the time that it will take, and are willing to take that time as well. So I think one is going to rise above the rest, but each individual league has its own way that it's gone about it to this point. So it's gonna time will tell. Ultimately, I feel confident in what we're doing. I think that we're doing things the right way for us. I'm not saying that we are perfect by any means necessary, but you can talk to the guys that have competed in it. They've had a good time. They've had a great experience with it, and the check clears. So that's important. So
that is a great way to put it. So I guess along those lines, was there a moment, especially when you guys started this league, maybe it was ahead of the first showcase or maybe in between 1 and 2, was there a moment that really stuck out to you where you were just like, oh my God, are we in over our head right here? Then all of a sudden it all worked out. Was there something like that?
Yeah. So in the first one, it's actually really funny. In the initial showcase, I ordered about 1,500 chairs initially, and not thinking of how many different things were going around the city of Pittsburgh that weekend.
Yeah.
And for me, I realized, and I looked at it, and we were about a week out, and I was like, I got way too many chairs. And so we had to cancel like half the chairs, which is fine, which is, which is okay. And then that's a part of the growing pain of doing this in promotion. But that was one that was like, holy man. And then after the first period of the very first match, Mickey Philippi and Nashawn Garrett, the score was 7-7. And myself and Donnie Hall, who does the mat side reporting at the end of each match, we just looked at each other and we're like, oh, buddy, I think we're on to something here. And, the final score of that match ended up being 19-15, Nashawn. but go back and watch it. They were both, they wrestled the exact way we wanted them to wrestle. Be free, make attempts, don't get banged for stalling. And when they did that, they both wrestled magnificently. And, you got that type of score from them competing that way.
Boy, that's kind of insane. I'm assuming there's like you order enough chairs now at this point where, or you have.
Yeah, we got that down. We got that down, Pat, Nick. Right there.
I mean, to me, that's crazy. It's like, yeah, you know what? We'll take just take half the order away, which is pretty funny. So, next event for you guys, I guess, as we mentioned before, is July 26th. So next weekend, CWA Showcase 4 in Pittsburgh at the Live Casino out there in the Steel City. Are there any names that really? I know you guys may have already made a couple of match announcements for this showcase event. Any names right now that are really sticking out to you as like, yeah, we are really excited that we have this guy back for his second or third event, or his first events coming up this weekend as well?
Yeah, so for us, we actually have the Van Brill brothers that are going to be on this card together. So that's an interesting dynamic in terms of, like, obviously for your New Jersey fans, they were, staples in the Rutgers lineup for years. But seeing them be on a team together again, both represent the Philadelphia Founders, is awesome. And then the guy that Mike's actually wrestling, Cody Law, he's a pretty big name in the MMA world. He's built himself up, was, a Penn State recruit, and then was a Division II national champion for University of Pittsburgh Johnstown. So him making his return to the mat, I'm excited to see that against Mike Van Brill. I think that is going to be a really good match. And then also Zane Lamb, the 2-time NAIA national champion and 4-time All-American out of Life University. Kid's a monster, finished third at the U.S. Open this past year, and he's going to wrestle Gavin Hoffman, All-American out of Ohio State. So those two wrestling at 220 pounds, I think, is also going to be a really exciting match. So those are the two that, like, if you're asking me what I have my eye on, those two are the ones that I would say I'm probably most intrigued about.
The weight classes are interesting too. 130, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 95, 220. But then the big one, instead of 285 or heavy, you guys go up to 300 pounds. What went into that decision? I mean, I know a lot of these guys. I mean, there are a couple of heavyweights in college that maybe do need to cut from, maybe like the 292 range down to 285. What went into the 300-pound weight class for you guys?
I think it's a little bit of I don't know, it kind of makes you look twice, right? You see, 300-pound weight class, you don't see the number 3 start any weight class. So just that part of it. And I mean, once you're to 285, what's 300 at that point? Either these guys are 255 and they're slim and they're moving, or they are a bigger guy. I mean, they turn into men at this point. You're in your mid 20s, late 20s. These guys grow too, just maybe not in the same way, but allow a little extra space for that dad strength, or something like that. But but 300 just to look at it is just a different feel, right, than 285.
Yeah, that's pretty bonkers, especially if these guys were college heavyweights. Maybe they became power lifters in the 5 years since they were wrestling. So maybe they have to cut down from about 315 down to 300. So I was curious about, just to go back to the dual meet format, which is coming up next year for you guys. I actually have 2 on that. One, right, I'll start you with this one. As far as the dual meet format is concerned, because you only have 6 teams, how does it look for next year? Is it just like, all right, each week we're going to feature only 2 teams, or there's going to be a round robin where these guys face each other multiple times a year? How does the schedule look like for the duels next year with just 6 teams in the league right now?
Yeah, so it'll be everybody wrestles everybody, right? So, and then we'll have regional home and homes as well. So Central PA and Pittsburgh will face each other twice. Philly and Lehigh Valley will face each other twice, and then New Jersey and New York City will as well.
Okay.
So you'll have 3 different dual meets on 3 different nights. So it'll be like an NFL style schedule, essentially, where 1 dual meet a night, 3 separate nights, and that's 1 week. So we run 6 weeks. So everyone gets 3 home matches, 3 on the road, and then top 4 will make the playoffs. Okay. And so then it'll basically be an 8-week season where we would crown a champion right as early November happens. So right in that open college tournament season where we'll wrap things up and lead you right into the college wrestling season.
Was there maybe not a worry, but obviously, because now where we are in July as we speak right now, football's right around the corner. Was there any concern about, well, maybe we shouldn't do it through the summer where football starts to ramp up for college and the NFL, and then do it in the middle of football season leading up to wrestling season? Or did you feel like, what, if we do the pro appetizer, so to speak, leading into college wrestling, there might be a way to generate more interest compared to, I guess, after NCAAs? Was that kind of the thought process?
Well, a lot of these guys, right, coming out of the NCAA championships, they're talking U.S. Open, World Team Trials, and then any sort of ranking series events. So putting it after Worlds, it just seems like the right time to start it, right? So our World Team's already been decided for a few months. So if you're not on that World Team, then that you're not traveling overseas to compete in September. So that's our focus was make it after Worlds. And obviously, having a World Team member on it changes things, right? And that's just some other nuances that we would have that discussion with if a World Team member was on a roster. But ultimately, this leaves opportunity for guys who are probably in the room, in the college room somewhere, whether it's through an RTC or just being on staff at a university. They're wrestling Folkstyle with a lot of those college guys anyhow. So it's not like, they're not doing it already. They're already in the midst of training somebody. They could also train themselves for this season that's going to come up in the fall.
And then my other question on the dual meets, I'll get it from you from the college perspective. I'm a big dual meet person, just being from Jersey, having wrestled in high school and, club and college, where I think duels are the de facto way to determine the best team in college wrestling or high school wrestling, wherever the case may be. Because you guys are really emphasizing Folkstyle gone pro, you want to make it where, in 2026, we're not just showing you the best matches. We're going to show you the best matches in a team format, and we're going to have playoffs. We're going to have a team champion, and we want to expand to further cities at that point. For college wrestling, do you really? I mean, are you on the same thought process of college wrestling to crown a team national champion should go the dual meet route in addition to the individual tournament?
Yeah, I think that they can both independently exist. I think that if you look at like a team like Nebraska, right? Like they have so many hammers up and down their lineup, but then also you look at like a UNI too. Like even though some of their guys may finish in the blood round or 8th at NCAAs, when they wrestle those 1s and 2s, they're right there. And that makes a big difference in a dual meet, right? Giving up 3 points as opposed to 5 or 6 in a dual meet can change the whole face of the outcome. So, I think that a dual meet championship and an individual championship, and I don't really think that they should have any bearing on one or the other. I don't believe that like you should get more points going into the individual championships because you won the team tournament or anything like that. I think they're two completely separate entities. I would love to see the NCAA figure out a way to regionalize advancing into that championship. Whether it's, you look at Pennsylvania alone and even New Jersey, right? Like you have teams in the EIWA, you have teams in the Big Ten, you have teams in the MAC, so like there's a mix of conferences that come through that. And yes, you could have like your top 4 of every conference, be represented in that, just like you do, with the NCAA basketball championships, right? The champ of every conference goes automatically, regardless of if they're 17 or 18 on the season, they still go, right? Yeah. So I think that's an important piece. I think representation across all conferences and doing it in some fashion like that could make for, a dual meet championship that really encompasses everybody in the wrestling world.
Yeah, hopefully it happens down the line. I'm trying to just speak it into existence at this point. So, Derek Caldwell with me here on On3 Wrestling. Derek, I really appreciate your time today. Anything you want to plug ahead of this next showcase event, CWA Showcase 4 in Pittsburgh on July 26th, and, of course, Showcase 5 in Toms River on August 16th. Social media, other wrestlers, wherever you want to plug, the floor is yours.
Yeah, absolutely. So CWAWrestle.com, you can get all your information about the upcoming events on there. Follow us on social, Instagram. We're on X. We're on Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at CWA Wrestle, or our handles for those. The biggest thing is if you support wrestling, just show up, whether it's through watching it live in person, or we have a streaming option as well that you guys can do. And I'll give that information to you, Nick, so you can put that with this episode as well. That's the big thing, is support in some way or another. We're trying to build this for the wrestling fans, right? Like, it's folk style focused. So, we're trying to make it something that's easily digestible for the fans, and it's faces that from NCAA's of yesteryear. So all the pieces are there. We just need to keep pushing it out and making it great.
Looking forward to it in Pittsburgh, of course, next weekend on the 26th, and again in Toms River on August 16th. Should be some good events. Derek, thank you very much. Have a good one, and looking forward to seeing how this evolves into 2026 when we ultimately get these teams together.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.
This is On3 Wrestling right here. Check our content out on on3.com. Be sure to follow our socials and follow me on Twitter as well. And be sure to check out all the CWA action and content on their social channels and their upcoming event on July 26th.